Hello. So today I'm going to show you some of the newer feature in FIGAF, and I'm going to focus on the B2B aspect of the migration from PI to CPI. So if we look at the FIGAF tool here, you will see that we have our PI to CPI migration. So in here, once you select the B2B option up here, you will then see any given operation mappings in your PI system that you say, well, these are part of my B2B scope, and I wish to migrate any of these. Now, before starting this, there's two things that has to be in place, and that's the focus now of this video. First of all, you need to first define your scope of what are you planning to move, and then you need to prepare your CPI system for the message types and for the partners that are in scope. This means that down here, you can go look for partner profiles in B2B menu, and you can see now that in our training system, we now only have a few partners defined. So when you start the process in PI, you might go, I don't know, if you go search for your ICOs or you go search for your um, you have some sort of management system where you keep an overview of what's in your system, what is utilized. Like one obvious one is of course using the SAP Trading Partner Management module in PI. But I mean, not everybody might be doing this, but if you're doing this, then you would see in here your sort of all your partners listed, what you are using, and all of your agreements also here listed of saying, okay, this is what we have and what is in scope. And let's say for argument's sake that now we say we wish to migrate one of our orders. We say it's an inbound order. It's one of the X12s that we are migrating. And we may be saying, okay, we have a bunch of partners. I got assigned doing the Bauhaus Sweden, for example. So we have that here and say, okay, now this is what we need to migrate. We can go in here and see the agreement. And based on this, you could form a overview of like, this is the scope we need to migrate. We need to migrate these partners. We need to make sure we're migrating these message types here. For example, X12 850 version 5010. So that would be one that we have in scope. But first things first is to say, well, if we look at our system, we can see we don't have Bauhaus in our system today. We do that then by saying create partner. And we can then say, well, we already know what the partners are. We have here, it's this partner that we want to migrate. I will then copy and paste that in here. Company short name. Now, this is already here. We start to focus a little bit on at least the governance and guidelines that BGAF would recommend. Now, we just at least recommend that you have a guideline, that you start off and say, okay, we need to know what are we going to call our different companies, our trading partners that we have in our system. Now, what we've worked on here is that saying like we would use lowercase to say the partner name, underscore, and then the ISO code for the country code. And this is simply just to say we put some of the most critical information that might be needed somewhere to sort at a later stage and also to easily identify uh, custom objects for this partner. And here we're talking about, for example, migrated operation mappings, which means that we know that this is Sweden. And then we can start in here and put in the details. Now, again, we could see here and then say, okay, how is this partner communicating? Now, SAP in the old PI system didn't really have the whole system set up in the TPM. So you were looking here and saying like, well, I don't really know how this is doing. I have to go to look at the integration builder and find this and that and whatever. Just for better overview here, we have then added some identifiers to show us quickly what are we talking about here in AS2 or whatever it might be that we have. So we say in this case, we say we want to use, we can say that the partner is, I'm just going to put cloud now. We have this already identified. Basically, we could put in a process direct depending on the if it was an alternative adapter that we don't support, but now we have an AS2, and we will probably create a type system or system type of like cloud AS2 connection at some point. but I'm just going to set this up as a cloud connection type. We say here that we have X12, and we know now that we want this version for this partner here. Now, the sender adapter type, this is then where we can go in and specify more details. I said like we could put AS2, but I would say in this case, I'm just going to put process direct, saying like if it was an alternative adapter like OFTP or something, we would always put process direct and say this is how we communicate with this partner. Then we have this. These are the identifiers on which we then say, well, this is sort of your first quick fast track to accelerate and import your partners very quickly. And that is by saying like, okay, now I know, for example, here, I can see I have some GLN codes here. So I say this GLN code is used for this partner. And then I can put that down here for GLN identifiers. SAP identifiers is there some sort of internal SAP identifier? For that, SAP didn't have in the TPM at least a standard agency qualifier. But we can see here there's been one created for example, SAP Partner ID. And there we can say, okay, here we have an identifier here. And we can then say we put that in then we can say, is there a dunce? We could go look again. And again, this is just saying there's a dunce here. Yes, we will then select the dunce and put that in as well. And finally, and just for reference here, you can leave any of these empty. You can see none of them are mandatory. So it's just, this is just optional, saying like, well, you can put in this if you like, and it'll give you something set. Yes, we do have a mutually agreed. We say that this is the ID we would use for this partner. And then you can put something of saying like, where are we here? We are in Stockholm. Do we have a post? No, we don't. Street? No, I forgot. Maybe later. This is not relevant, but it's just like extra information that could be interesting. I say they're probably, so we can put like, for example, right? I save that and the process begins. Create partner profile. This will be executed, checking everything, and we can close. And we can now see immediately our Sweden, Bauhaus Sweden here has been created directly with a link where we can say, show me this partner in our integration suite. And we go directly to the B2B trading partner management. And then we can see here the partners we already had. And now a new partner, Bauhaus Sweden, has been created. And one of the benefits now with this process is not only have we this partner, but we have then also these identifiers using a naming convention, again proposed by FIGAF, to say like, okay, this way you would always be able to then at least say for these typical identifiers, you will always create them following the same naming convention, and the alias will reflect clearly what this is. So you can see that this identifier is to be used for the X12, and it is for Bauhaus Sweden, which helps actually when you start doing perhaps some manual configuration of some of your scenarios, then you would then select these identifiers, and then it's actually nice to see these aliases where they actually tell you what it is. So you can see all these here have been created, and again, with a similar naming convention that you would get for all your partners if you use the FIGAF tool. Also very good is that you will then have here your business systems or your systems already created for this partner. So for this partner, straight out of the box, you have now 3 systems defined: your development, your test, and your production system defined, even with the different type system assigned. There can be multiple, of course, but here we have just assigned now the X12, and it already has the standard communications defined here with your 2 generic more sender and receiver channels, which you can then go in and configure. And of course, here you say like, well, our receiver channel for this process direct is still just populated with a dummy value because we didn't know. You can see we've just put in basically the short name. So it's the company short name. A dummy is saying like, yeah, okay, until you know more about how you're going to do your configuration. But the point is more, your communications are in place, which will help you to create agreements right away without having to say, okay, what do I need to set up before I can actually actually create and activate my agreement. Now everything is in place. You can start creating your agreements, and which means you can start your migration once you've completed your also preparation for the message types, which will be in the next video I will concentrate on. Thank you for watching.